Joining me today is the TheRSGuy, winner of the last 2 golden gnomes for Best RS Free Streamer, and regular face on the front of the Runescape Twitch directory. On his Twitch, you'll see him doing various PVM content, whether it's really high level bossing, pushing Telos in rage, going for high streaks, or you might see him doing various training on his Hardcore Iron Man. On YouTube, you'll see all sorts of guides, as well as progress videos and other achievements that he's done on his streams. In this first part, the 2-part interview, we're going to be covering how he got into RuneScape, where the username came from, what he's looking forward to in the Elder God Wars dungeon, as well as touching on a couple of things that he thinks maybe could be altered in RuneScape. Join me as I head into the mind of the TheRSGuy. Hello, the TheRSGuy. Welcome.
Hello.
How you
Thanks
doing
for
this
having me on.
afternoon? Yeah, no, thank you for coming and spending your valuable time with me.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm doing good. Having a good day so far.
Fantastic. So, let's start, as we always do. How did you get into RuneScape?
That's such a good question. So I had an IRL friend who lived like a block away from me, just down the street. And him and his older brother shared a RuneScape account. And they like used to play, and it was way higher level than mine because like I was barely ever allowed on the computer. But they got me into it because I was only 6 or 7 at the time. I was a little young, but then my friend's older brother was probably 10, 11. So like kind of right in the age where a lot of people start playing. So made my account, and I'd say the rest is history, but I feel like most people, if you've played the game for like 15 years, you've had lots of times where you've like quit or come back or anything like that. But the reason I got membership in the first place was because this IRL friend and his brother, they thought that you couldn't do the heroes quest without like with someone who'd already done it. So because of that, they were like, okay, so you need to get membership and get the stats for heroes quest so that we can get the quest done. So that's like the literal only reason I ever got membership.
And then it kind of spiraled from there a bit.
Yeah, it turned into a lot more than I definitely ever bargained for.
So you say you've like had breaks, quit. Was there anything in particular that caused you to have these breaks?
It depends. Since I've become a streamer, I've been very consistent for the past 3+ years, and I think there's a lot that goes into being able to do that, and we can talk more on that later. I think there's a question later on about that. But I mean, I quit when the evolution of combat happened because my interests were kind of PvP related. I had just started getting into PvPing because I never had a lot of GP, and it's always a money sink if you're learning anything new, whether it's a new boss or it's going into the wilderness. So just right when I finally had some GP to learn how to PvP, I'd say within 6 months of that, the evolution of combat came out. And when that happened, I actually started making old school videos. I played old school for about a year, and then I ended up switching back because just the small audience, I maybe had 50 subscribers on YouTube, but the small audience I had, they said they preferred the RS3 stuff. So I switched back.
And then you've never looked back?
Yeah, I've never looked back from then. Obviously, like in high school, I'm sure, and in university, there were lots of like 4-month or 5-month or 6-month breaks, but that's just, don't have a whole lot going on, or I don't feel like playing, or I'm busy with other things. It wasn't so much that I like didn't like the game. But I also have a bit of a rule, which is like, if I'm not having fun as a like content creator, I'm not going to force it, because that's how you start hating the game. And that's how it starts not feeling like a game. So
yeah.
Anytime I start feeling like, man, I don't really want to do anything, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to say, I'll be back in a couple of days. Just need to mentally kind of refresh, and then normally good to go.
All right. And where did your username come from?
So this is a really, I don't think I've ever told this story before. It's not a good one, but I always wanted one of those like content creator names. Like when I was a kid, when I was a little kid, I always looked up to like the PvPers. So like there was like PK King 5 was really cool, and like YK Man and all these people, and like YK Man, I'm sure he's a small, even by those days standards, he was a small content creator, but like I used to watch all of his PvP videos, and like everyone knew like what these people's first names were, and I thought that was really cool. So I wanted a name that was like, that had Ryan in it initially. So my first videos, my RSN is Mr. Ryan, because that's the only one I could get that had Ryan in it. And then after that, when I switched to RuneScape 3 videos, I wanted a name like the RS guy. I just thought it'd be funny. It was like I play RuneScape. I'm a guy. I'll be the RS guy. It wasn't that I knew anything about the game or I was like a good player by any means or a good content creator. I just kid me or younger me just always thought that would be cool. So I was the RS guy with 2 Ys for about a year and a half. If you go to any of my earlier videos, and then on one of the name releases, it became available. So I just snagged it, never looked back.
Fantastic. And obviously, it is your job, so I don't really need to ask you what keeps you playing. But it's been a tricky few months. I think most people would sort of agree to that in terms of content and updates that have been coming out for the game. So, what do you do to keep yourself motivated when you're not getting a new influx of stuff?
So I have 2 different sort of stances on this. Like I said before, I'm not going to play the game if I'm not enjoying it. And a lot of that onus is on me to find different things I enjoy. So there have been times where I'm bored of the mainscape scene because we haven't had a new difficult boss in it's like well over 1,000 days since Telos came out. And, that's more than fair enough. But at that point, instead of saying, well, I don't feel like playing my main, I'm just going to not stream because that would be, really bad for me. Instead, it's about, finding other things that I enjoy. So I've been progressing a ton on my hardcore Iron Man because that's something that I will enjoy, even if the PVMing on my main is, less enjoyable. And then if I get tired of that, I can cycle onto something else. Like I'll do a teaching session or any sort of number of different activities in game. And that's sort of how I like to, keep it fresh because like I said before, anytime I'm not having fun, I feel like the people watching me aren't going to have fun either. And my job is to entertain people. It's to be in a good positive mindset and be excited and be as myself as I can be, but also to remember that these people are watching to be entertained. And hearing someone streaming and complaining, can't believe we didn't have an update, I'm just gonna sit here and do what we did the last 27 days. Like at that point, I don't even think that's so much Jegex's fault. I think on one hand, it's great when Jegex puts out streamable content, streamable bosses, anything like that. It's always great. But to me, it's the streamer's job to figure out what they're going to do with what they have in the game. So I'm not a huge fan of the complaining that I hear a lot of like, oh, I can't stream because there hasn't been a new boss. It's like, well, sometimes you need to figure out something original that you can do until there is a new boss. Although I totally get the frustration because I think it's been way too long. And the fact that there isn't a dedicated team who are working on bosses constantly for RuneScape boggles my mind because that's sort of how you move the needle for PVMing and you inspire people to play it is by releasing these big things.
It's what gets people watching as well, isn't it?
Yeah, to an extent, for sure. It makes a big difference there too. Although I know it's probably going to come up later, but relating to the PVM hub that's coming out, I think it'll come out the day this comes out.
The day after.
Yes. Day after. Yeah, I'm hoping what that is going to do is get more people into PVMing. Along with that update, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of content releases related to, getting new people into PVMing. And I'm hoping as a result of that, we get an influx of new PVMers and then Jagex can actually start allocating resources to bosses. And then we maybe get more than a boss every year and a half. So anyway, that's sort of my hope going forward.
All right. And let's go back to some earlier times. What was your first 99?
First 99 was 99 attack. I was doing a black demon task in Taverley Dungeon with a chaotic rapier. And yeah, that was back when I didn't have a desktop, so I was playing on a laptop. It was well before the evolution of combat or any of that. But that was the first of many. I ended up getting every single combat 99 without a single non-combat one. So I've always been a PVM or PvP focused person in terms of my gameplay. I've never been too much of a skiller. My last 99, I think I did 3 or 4 on the same day, so I can't remember what they were, but I believe it was maybe Thieving and Hunter. I think were my 2 last ones. And that would have been in, I think, 2016.
And I think most people know already, but your favorite boss?
So my favorite boss in the game is probably Telos, but I don't think Telos is the best boss in the game. The thing I like about Telos is it's still a very significant challenge to me. And there's a way to, continue pushing my enrage and actually experience something that I find very difficult. It's very dynamic in terms of just having enrage and having so many different strategies to do with a boss that can be stunned and frozen and can actually use freedom like a player could. It's a boss that I find difficult to get bored of, because if I get bored of doing a streak, I can then, push my max in rage or do claims or do, anything in between or go for speed kills. So that's why Telos is my favorite boss in the game, but it isn't the best boss in the game. In my opinion, the best boss in the game is Hard Mode Vorago from a design standpoint. But I know there's a question later on about sort of boss mechanics, and we can get more into that then.
All right, lovely. And I know you're not hugely into your quests and stuff, but have you got a favorite like quest NPC or quest line or quest?
Oh man, put me on the spot here. Quest lines. My spacebar might be able to answer better than me. Favorite quest. I really enjoyed Ritual of the Majorat. I've actually done it twice now, guideless on 2 separate accounts, and I think it's a fantastic quest. So that'd be my favorite quest. Favorite quest NPC, or just NPC in the game?
Just NPC in the game. Yeah.
I've got to go. I think Wise Old Man. I think the story and the secrecy around him, it's so cool. I just wish I could be him someday in like 60 to 80 years.
He's been a very popular pick. I think you're the 3rd or 4th person that said
Oh,
Wise
really?
Old Man. Yeah. And you've been playing ages, as you said. Have you got a favorite like period of time in that
This
history?
is like, yeah, I do. It's the time that anyone who PvP'd would say, which was like the 2012 like Void Karasi spec days of PvPing. I just thought it was a perfectly balanced sort of time for PvPing in the game, where it was a ton of fun. You could fight anyone in any gear for the most part, other than maybe the people wearing Torva back when it like doubled your HP, and you'd have a good chance of getting a kill, or them killing you. The fights were fast. The fights were fun. And the Karasi spec kind of changed the game a bit, because if someone's wearing really tanky melee gear, it comes out as a magic attack. So it gave you a way to deal with people who were, wearing better gear than what you had. So as someone who didn't have a lot of GP, absolutely my favorite time. And yeah, I wish I could go back. I actually, like, years and years and years ago, I used to, like, when the Evolution of Combat came out, before I went to old school, and I know this is against the rules, don't report me. I like did like the whole private server thing that I think a lot of people did, where they're just looking for that same era of PvP. With no avail, of course, because a private server is never going to be anything like what RuneScape is, but it was a fun little summer.
People know you for your various achievements in games, so stuff like obviously recently the solo Beastmaster, that sort of thing. Have you got a favourite one in your mind that you're most proud of doing?
It'd be between two. It'd either be 1K Enrage No Food, or it would be Duo Hard Mode Virago. But I think it's Duo Hard Mode. Because the whole idea of TheRSGuy duoing hard mode, like, it started as a joke because of how out of range it would be, and like that's totally merited. It wasn't even like a proving people wrong thing for me. It's just like there was no way. I barely trioed hard mode, and when I trioed, I got carried by 2 of the best PVMers in the game. Like they did it like a leech kill basically when I trioed the first time. So I was not good at hard mode, and it literally started as a joke because my friend Mel, or Malad, who's a great streamer, him and his duo partner, they'd been going for it for months, and his duo partner wasn't on. And I said, hey, you should just take me, as a full-on joke. I was kidding. Like, it was meant to be like a meme, and then he just said, gear up, let's go. And then 100 hours later, I had a duo hard mode kill, and now I like absolutely love the boss. It's, like I said, what I think is the best designed boss in the entire game. So yeah, definitely that one I'm really proud of, especially getting it done before the ranch out of time and all that as well, because there was a good amount of power creep out of that update, and to be able to say I was one of the 20 people to get it done before that point, I'm really proud of that one.
And moving on, similar direction from that, Vorago is the best boss in the game. Explain why you think that, and then what you would do to make a new best boss.
Okay, so it's got to be hard mode Vorago. Normal mode would be in the same sort of category, except 2 of the 5 phases, for those who don't know, they're time phases. So it doesn't matter how much damage you deal, the phase doesn't end. And I think they could do a lot of sort of, speeding up those phases. Kind of like, it's the same thing with Araxor's Light Path, where it'd be really cool if there was some way to speed up that phasing. And there's been talk of like an Araxor quest maybe doing that. But I would really Yeah, I'd like to see that at normal mode, but for hard mode, you've got 2 time phases out of 11 phases. So it's actually like a decent break. You get a time phase right before phases 10 and 11, which are like the push phases, the intense phases, and then you've got one sort of right at the start of the kill. And I think it works out really nicely. The thing I like about hard mode, just every single phase has its own story, its own feel, its own aesthetic, and its own strategies. For all the different phase 3s of going through every single week. And then when you get to phase 10 and phase 11, it's by far the single most dynamic boss fight in the entire game, where it doesn't matter at all how much damage you deal or how much damage you take for that matter. It's all about managing pushback, which completely exists only at Vorago in a vacuum. It's different from anything else in the game where, if you use devotion on a blue bomb, it doesn't matter that you didn't take any damage, you're still taking full pushback. So the strategies just get so different, and there's so much fun as well with like cade swapping and intercepting and just figuring out ways to mitigate the pushback so that you can push the boss. I think it's more dynamic than any other boss fight in the game. And it's got group mechanics that I think a lot of future bosses haven't had, where if you look at Solak or Angel of Death, every single mechanic is either you're taking some arbitrary damage or you have to deal some arbitrary damage. There's nothing more than that. Whereas with Vorago, you've got different ultimates being utilized and cade swapping, and it's I could talk about it all day, but Vorago, by far, in my opinion, the best created boss in the game, and then Telos would be my second.
So for Elder God Wars Dungeon, what are you hoping to see? Any mechanics or anything like that in particular?
I really want there to be a 5th boss. That's a very difficult solo boss. It's been too long since Telos, and I hope it has Enrage. Because, in my opinion, any boss that comes out now that doesn't have Enrage, it's a bit of a waste of dev time. Because the skill ceiling is so high, and the variance in player damage output is so high at this stage in the game, where you could take 2 people with the same gear, and one could output 2.5 times more damage with the exact same gear. And because of that, if you make a boss that only has one setting, even to that player that it's like perfectly situated for, it's right in their wheelhouse, it's the perfect boss fight for them. They do it 50 times, all of a sudden it's going to be too easy for them. And they're no longer having fun. They're no longer challenging themselves. So to me, to make a boss that doesn't have some kind of enrage mechanic, you're making a boss for 20% of the player base, and then that 20% is going to graduate from it eventually anyway. So I'm hoping for some kind of enrage. I'm hoping the 5th boss is the hardest boss in the game, but I doubt they do that. Well, actually, I don't doubt they do that, but they've already said that they're going to be releasing the first 4 bosses first. And they've also said that the first 4 bosses are going to be, and I quote, massable, kind of like God Wars 2. And that's a little concerning to me. I won't lie, because you're looking at Elder God Wars, it's easily going to be tier 90 gear dropped, probably above, from massable bosses. And it kind of reminds me of a discussion that that a lot of players had with Jagex in the past, where they value the amount of players playing the content over, how much time you spend playing the content or how actively you're playing the content. And that's why you get all these AFK events that you can play on mobile. It's because, well, the player count is so high because people don't have to interact with it. And it kind of reminds me of sort of the same thing where they're looking at Vindicta and people massing Vindicta and camping that boss because it's very easy. It's not a challenge. And then saying, we need more of that because a lot of players interact with it. And I think it's a potentially concerning sort of design choice. But I'm also looking forward to being pleasantly surprised. I really hope there's difficult. And if the main bosses are massable, I would hope that there'd be like a challenge mode that's maybe capped on how many people can go in. And I think that would be a really decent way to make it enjoyable or a bit of a challenge too. Yeah. But I'm not expecting any of those bosses to have an rate.
No, I wouldn't have thought so for the smaller guys either. But are you hoping for something with like weekly mechanics as well that change, like Rax and Rago, for the big main boss, or do you think it's better to keep it that like standard? I'm not too fussed about it, to be totally honest. Like I think Vorago without the weekly rotations would still be a fun boss, but they're a nice way to make camping the boss more enjoyable, so long as they're pretty well balanced. You don't want to have one week that's way easier than all the other ones, but if you can balance it out, I think weekly rotations and weekly mechanics, they can be really enjoyable. So yeah, I would love to see them play around with that. Just anything that makes a boss fight less static, I think is a good thing.
Because especially if you're making drop rates, like look at the Ambassador. In a solo, it's a 1 in 55 for a crossbow. Average player is doing 2 runs an hour. So the average player is going to spend, what, 23 hours, 22 and a half hours doing the Ambassador to get, their first crossbow piece. A boss that doesn't change at all ever is terrible for that. You're spending almost a full 24-hour day doing a boss that is exactly the same 6-minute fight every time. That just to me is, I don't want to say it's poor design, because like, what do I know? I'm just a dude. But to me, it feels like for 20% more dev time to have a boss that changed every couple of weeks, it would have a lot more staying power.
I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for the Elite Dungeon series, though, they had kind of these static bosses for the first two, so they weren't likely to change it for the third either.
For
but
sure.
It's just looking forward, something you want them to hopefully avoid.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. It's not like an expectation that, the Ambassador should have different rotations. Like, there's no way. It doesn't even fit well within the scheming, but that is a way to, make the boss a little more dynamic.
And is there, kind of leading on from that, is there one thing you'd change about the current state of RS3?
Yes. Kind of a couple things. I know people are gonna go like, "Oh, remove MTX." Like that's not what it is for me. What it is for me is, I'll give you an example, and this is like, I don't mean to like badmouth anybody. I never would in the world. I'm not gonna name any names here, of course. But there are a lot of problems with the tooltips in game that lead to people actually getting incorrect information about PVMing from the game itself. Give you an example. Backhand, it says it does 100% damage. Slice, it says it does between 30 and 130% damage. So which one is better? Most people are going to say backhand. Thing is, backhand has a min hit of 20% damage. It's just not listed. So Slice is actually better than backhand. They just doesn't show up on the tooltip. And it's like this for every ability in the game, by the way. Half of them have min damages and max damages. Half of them don't. And then it's the exact same thing for weapons, where they're scaled for auto attack speed. So if you're on legacy mode and auto attacking. So for example, a main hand Dragor mace is the cheapest Dragor, potentially because people think it does less damage than the other ones that attack slower, when they do the exact same amount of damage. And the mace is technically the best Dragor, but the cheapest one, because of this misconception. And it affects people all the time, and it makes it even harder to get into PVMing. And here's where we get into Ryan Dragons to people. But I explained this to Jagex in a call basically 2 months ago, and they were like super interested, and they're like, "Oh my god, how is this even in the game? Like, it's crazy." And I sent them all in. I did all the work in terms of typing out all the examples, all the solutions, how they should change it, the right way to do it, the right approach. I sent that in 2 months ago and didn't even hear back. And it's just like, I did the work for them too. And I don't know, it's a little frustrating to like, and these things happen, right? It's a big company. There are mix-ups. There are communication issues. But it irked me a little bit that, there's this huge issue that is stopping me from getting into PVMing. The PVM Hub is coming out in 5 days from the time we're recording this. And yet, updates like this that could have been implemented like it would have taken one person 1 hour to do. And it just, yeah. So that's one thing I would change, is just all the interfaces, all of the weapons should be scaled for ability damage, not auto attack damage, stuff like that. I would streamline that stuff. And I really do hope it happens. I don't mean to like, badmouth anybody. And I have a lot of people at Jagex who I love working with. And it's, it's not something like that. It's just, this was one instance where it was a little bit frustrating for me, I would say.
So would you say including stuff like, they've got like the little sort of boss guides, would you say having something a bit more in depth in there would help as well?
That's another one that I've spoken with a lot of people about, and what I want them to add, and I've been pushing for it pretty hard with, I don't have that much sway, obviously, I'm a content creator, but one thing I have been pushing for that I hope they do is they already have, if you look at a Raxor, a button for all the tactics that shows you every special attack. And it literally plays it for you. It shows you what the animation looks like, and it tells you how to deal with it. And the fact that other bosses in the game, like, they're not adding bosses quickly. The fact that Telos doesn't have that is a little mind-blowing to me, because I think it would help a lot of people to know, hey, this is what it looks like. And hey, the average person for a hold still is going to use Freedom 1 attack before. They're going to wait for the small melee hit. They're going to take off the prayer and rezo the big one, and then they're going to step out of the way. And just something like as simple as that to show people how to get past that mechanic that they can watch back. I think it would take zero dev time because they already, well, not zero, but not very much. They already have all the infrastructure there to support it. It's already in the game from Araxor. And just the fact that it hasn't been done for other bosses is, yeah. I don't want to say it's like disappointing or anything like that. Like I, have a not a leg to stand on, but yeah. I'm not disappointed. It'd be really helpful. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it's surprising that they didn't add it to new bosses that came out after Raxor as well. If they did it before, the surprising, I suppose, is the word.
Exactly. But I mean, hopefully with the PVM Hub, a lot of this is changing. It's kind of it's one of those situations where I think it has to get bad to get good again. That's a really bad way of saying like one of the best analogies ever. But I think as they continue to drop the ball in terms of getting people into PVMing, and as it reflects in the number of people PVMing, I think these changes are going to actually come, and they're going to have to prioritize quality of life for PVMing so that the high level PVM community doesn't completely run out of people doing it. So I'm hopeful anyway. I actually think the future is a lot brighter than it was like a year ago. Just with even ideas like the PVM Hub being entertained, I think it shows a good sign. I'm hoping there's the expertise there to make sure that it actually gets done in a timely fashion.
Your thoughts on the PVM Hub from what you've seen on the streams and stuff?
I think it's going to be the best PVM update we've had in years. I think, it's similar to the argument of like comp being related to PVMing. Same with maxing. The only reason I maxed was so that I could stream next without wasting people's time running there. And I will freely say that is the only reason I maxed. I didn't want to start my streaming until I'd maxed because I didn't want to waste people's time. So to know that the next generation of people coming up aren't going to have to worry about that, it's perfect. It's fantastic. I'm just so excited for, hopefully an influx of new people getting to those bosses more easily and having sort of an area where, PVMers can interact with each other and hang out and possibly form teams in the future as well. It's, to me, it's a 10 out of 10 update. Based on what I've seen, obviously it hasn't come out yet. I'll have to play it. I'll have to cover it, but I'm really excited. It doesn't even affect me at all. Like it will not affect me in the slightest, but I am so excited for what it could do to the community if it's properly implemented.
I mean, it's perfect for me because I'm not maxed yet. I've been playing for, pretty much a year exactly now. So as soon as that came out, there was a portal. I was like, no more running all the way across Canifus to get to Rax.
Are you going to try some new bosses?
I mean, I've done most of them already, most of the solo ones, yeah. But I'll just be able to do them easier. Is the thing.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be nice on my hardcore too, to be honest, because far from maxed.
Yeah, and it's nice that it's free to play update as well. I don't know if you saw that on the Q&A today, but it's available for free to play players too.
Yeah, I mean they have 2 bosses, Mole and KBD. I think they can do.
Yeah, it's something.
It's something. Yeah. Do they even have Mole? I'm not sure.
I know they have Mole KBD.
Not sure about that, but not important.
No.
KBD is included. That's the important one.
And is there anything you think that RS3 can learn from old school? And do you think there's anything that maybe that's in RS3 could go over to old school?
For sure. One thing that they could definitely learn from old school. Inferno's been out for 2.5 years, 2 years. Less than 1,000 players have an Inferno cape on old school. By the play number metrics, it's a terrible update. And if you looked at that from an RS3 standpoint, that's an update that they would look at and say, that's not a good update. People aren't playing it. But the Inferno is one of the best updates old school ever had. It moved the needle for high-end PVMing, and it's still some of the most popular, enjoyable content in the entire game. With a mastery of mechanics and a progression. And I think it's a perfect update that would not make it in RS3 with the current mindset. So that's one thing for sure. Trying to think other things RS3 could learn from old school. I mean, they've done a lot with seasonals. And some of the seasonals they've done, obviously Deadman would not be good in RS3 by not even a tiny bit. It's not even worth entertaining. But old school has actually experimented with seasonals. And that's something that I wish RS3 did. Don't care if it sucks. Don't care if it's king of the skill and I'm not a skiller, but if you guys are, not aware of what that is, basically people had to make a new account with buffed XP rates and had 24 hours to get as high total level as possible. Stuff like that, it could potentially apply to RS3. And I'd like to see some of that stuff get attempted. Even if it's not a home run, great idea, like this is going to change everything. I would just like to see more seasonal content. And on old school, there doesn't seem to be a fear about like, yeah, this might not be super popular, but let's try it out anyway. And out of that, you've got Twisted Leagues that were extremely popular and a lot of other stuff that was, yeah, well utilized, enjoyable to play.
Do you think something like Twisted League would work in RS3?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see why not, because the end game focus of Twisted League was generally PVMing. Like Wook said, he broke his all-time view count record doing, yeah, he was bossing on his Twisted League. He was doing Ohm, or the first raids, and yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be successful in RuneScape 3. The other thing that seasonals do that's really useful and important is it gives a newer player an opportunity to play this new account for a week and get endgame stats to try out the endgame bosses. And what that does in turn is it shows people that, hey, if you enjoy a boss in Twisted League, I might like to do that on my main. And it actually helps greatly. And there are figures on this, obviously, I don't have them, but it helps greatly with player retention in terms of giving your lower mid-level players sort of a sneak peek for a short period of time of what the end game looks like. So that's another thing that old school does very well, even with the tournament worlds, which I even log on to once in a while when they have them open on old school, where it's basically a sandbox mode for PvPing.
I guess it's good because it starts everyone on the same like playing field as well. So for those people that are sort of coming up, they feel like they know what sort of the idea of the game is. It gives them a chance to get a head start with their friends and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also less of a commitment as well in terms of like if you wanted to in Deadman, I know Deadman is gone, it's probably coming back. You could in probably 4 hours of playing Deadman end up with an account that you could feasibly PK with. Whereas on a main account, it takes a lot longer than that. So if you're hanging out with your friends, you're all going to make PvP accounts on your main. It's like probably not. It's going to take, a couple of weeks and some questing and everything else. But if you can do it in an afternoon, just have a fun afternoon and then forget about it. It's it's a good way to experience that. So I think there's a lot. I mean, old school does a lot wrong as well, but I think there's a lot old school could learn from, or sorry, RSC could learn from old school just in terms of how they've gone about things.
Okay, and now stepping towards Runefest. Obviously,
Yes.
you've been very successful at the Golden Gnomes. How has the whole experience of getting them and the ceremonies and stuff been?
I love Runefest. It's so cool. My first Runefest was 2 years ago, and going to a convention or even hanging out at a bar the night before, going to a bar and hanging out with just people who play RuneScape is something that I never thought I would experience, and it's extremely cool. And I feel like the people and that sort of atmosphere is what gets a lot of people going back to Runefest. And that's probably the thing I love most about it, is just getting to meet people, whether it's content creators I look up to, or meeting people who actually have enjoyed my content and stuff that I've put a lot of time into doing. And it's incredible just to be able to put a face to a name that you've seen online for a really long time, and to meet up with friends that I talk to literally every day, and getting to see them in person and hang out with them and go drinking with them. And it's it's a fantastic atmosphere. As for the Golden Gnomes and stuff like that, it's something I try not to pay too much attention to. It's always, it's exciting. It's an absolute honor to, be chosen for a Golden Gnome. But at the same time, I think when you're streaming, you really need to be in the moment. Having won a Golden Gnome last year or the year before, it doesn't affect what I do on my day-to-day, today, tomorrow. What am I doing next week? So I think it can be dangerous to get caught in the past. And, like I won a best streamer award for a past year. That doesn't make me the best streamer today. What makes me the best streamer today is how much effort I can put in and how much time I can put into making sure I'm doing the best I can. So yeah, that's sort of a, not to like be dismissive of the Golden Gnomes. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. It's just, you don't want to make that a focal point. At the same time, it's always just butterflies, figuring out like, oh my God, are they going to call my name? All this stuff. Am I going to have to get up on stage? It's a really surreal experience to be able to kind of look up and look out at people who are, applauding you, or, knowing that people at home, voted for you or picked you or thought, yeah, this person, in my opinion, is the best streamer. And that's really, really, that's something I will cherish my entire life. Just that feeling of knowing that people, genuinely appreciate the time and the energy I put into what I do.